The Ecclesiarchy in Warhammer 40K, uh, it's quite the organization, isn't it? Guiding the spiritual beliefs of trillions across a galaxy with countless worlds. It's really hard to wrap your head around that sort of influence.
It really is. The Ecclesiarchy really shows just how vast the Imperium is and how strong faith can be, even in such a grim universe as Warhammer 40K.
But there's more to it than just numbers, isn't there? The Ecclesiarchy is not just some, a purely religious institution. It's woven into the Imperium itself. It holds real power. It enforces its doctrines and shapes the lives of so many people.
That's true to really understand the Ecclesiarchy. I think we need to go back to its beginnings, to the time when the Emperor of Mankind was leading the Great Crusade, trying to bring humanity together under his rule. That's where the story of the Ecclesiarchy begins.
So we're talking about the early days of the Imperium, a time of massive change and upheaval. What led to the rise of the Ecclesiarchy? What need did it fulfill back then?
Well, the Great Crusade was a time of great hope for humanity, but also a time of fear and uncertainty. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and after the Age of Strife, people were looking for something to believe in, something to give them hope. And then you have the Lectitio Divinitatis appearing, declaring the emperor to be a god.
Ah, yes, the Lectitio Divinitatis, quite a controversial text. Some say it was a power grab by those in control. Others see it as a genuine expression of faith in the emperor's power. Regardless of its origins, its impact on the Ecclesiarchy is undeniable.
It was like a spark that ignited a wildfire. All these different emperor-worshipping cults began to appear across the newly conquered worlds, each one with its own take on the emperor's divinity and his message to humanity. It was a chaotic time with these competing cults all vying for power.
And out of all this religious fervor, this one cult emerges, the Temple of the Savior Emperor. What was it about this particular cult that set them apart from the rest? Why did they end up becoming the dominant force?
Well, the Temple of the Savior Emperor had some advantages going for them. Their version of the Lectitio Divinitatis, it appealed to a lot of people. They emphasized the emperor as this benevolent protector, a god who cared for his people and offered them salvation. And maybe even more importantly, they were based on Terra, the heart of the Imperium, right where the emperor's power was centered.
So being close to the seat of power gave them a real edge over their rivals. It's a classic power play. Proximity to the throne usually equals political influence, and the Temple of the Savior Emperor. They knew how to play the game.
They were really good at taking advantage of their position. You know, they built relationships with powerful figures in the Imperium, they got support from wealthy nobles, and they even managed to win over some elements within the Space Marines. Their influence just kept growing and growing, and they either absorbed their rivals or eliminated them.
So it wasn't always a peaceful rise to the top. It seems the Temple of the Savior Emperor wasn't afraid to use force to eliminate anyone who got in their way. It's a reminder that faith, even when it's genuine, can be used to justify violence and oppression.
Yeah, it's a dark side of faith that the Ecclesiarchy has never really escaped. But by that point, their ascent was almost inevitable. By the 32nd millennium, the Temple of the Savior Emperor, they had achieved what they set out to do. They were officially recognized as the Adeptus Ministorum, the state church of the Imperium.
It's a remarkable story, going from a small cult to this massive galaxy-spanning religious power. But this new status, it came with its own challenges, didn't it? They were now in charge of the spiritual well-being of trillions of people across millions of worlds, each with their own unique cultures and beliefs.
Exactly. Managing that kind of diversity, keeping everyone on the same page across such a vast empire, that was a huge task. They needed a very strict structure, a system of control that could guarantee that the emperor's word was being spread and his laws were being followed. They had to create this massive and complicated bureaucracy.
So they built a machine of faith to manage souls and enforce orthodoxy across the galaxy. And at the top of this machine, at the very top of this hierarchy, is the Ecclesiarch, the spiritual leader of the Imperium, who sits among the High Lords of Terra.
The Ecclesiarch is incredibly powerful, only answering to the emperor in theory. He controls vast resources, commands the loyalty of billions, and his words can literally start and end wars.
It's a position that's drawn some of the most ambitious and ruthless people in the Imperium's history. Men and women who've used their religious authority to gain powers, crush their enemies. It's a reminder that even within an organization that's supposed to be holy, the desire for power can corrupt even the most devoted followers.
Power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts, absolutely. It's a lesson that the Ecclesiarchy has learned again and again throughout its long and turbulent history.
But let's not get ahead of ourselves. We've talked about the Ecclesiarchy's origins, their rise to power, and how their hierarchy is structured. But what about their beliefs? What are the key principles of the Imperial Creed, the faith that unites trillions across the Imperium?
At its core, the Imperial Creed is a simple faith. It's based on the belief that the emperor is a god, his sacrifice for humanity, and his eventual return to lead his people to a golden age. It's a message of hope and salvation, a promise of a better future in a galaxy that often feels like it's filled with only darkness and despair.
A simple message, yes, but it's not without its complexities. We're talking about a galaxy with so many different cultures, different ways of interpreting history, and different levels of understanding. So how does the Ecclesiarchy make sure that this simple message is understood and followed the same way across such a vast and diverse empire?
That's the real challenge, isn't it? Keeping everyone unified in their faith across millions of worlds. And the way the Ecclesiarchy has dealt with this is through a combination of practicality and ruthlessness. They've created this rigid system of doctrines, rituals, and practices, all meant to enforce conformity and get rid of any deviation from the accepted truth.
So it's not just about faith, it's about control over people's minds and hearts, control over information, and control over what it even means to be a faithful servant of the emperor.
Control is essential to the Ecclesiarchy's power. In a galaxy as chaotic and dangerous as Warhammer 40K, even faith needs a strong hand to guide it. And that strong hand often works through fear of heresy, fear of what they don't understand, fear of the warp. It's a powerful combination that the Ecclesiarchy uses to keep their followers in line and to justify their methods, which can be quite harsh.
You mentioning fear, it's interesting because the Ecclesiarchy has this strange relationship with power. They preach humility, self-sacrifice, devotion to the emperor, but at the same time, they have so much political and military power, and they often use violence and oppression to get what they want. How do they balance these two seemingly opposite ideas?
It's a tension that's always present in the Ecclesiarchy. They believe they're acting on behalf of the emperor, that they have to use force to protect humanity from all the threats out there. They see themselves as warriors fighting for their faith, using the emperor's light against the darkness.
Warriors of faith. It's a striking image, one that really resonates with a lot of people in the Imperium. But it does raise some difficult questions about what faith really is and how easily it can be twisted. Throughout history, religion has been used to justify violence and oppression. Is the Ecclesiarchy really any different?
That's a question that the Imperium has been grappling with for centuries, and there are no easy answers. The Ecclesiarchy truly believes that they hold the only path to salvation, the only way for humanity to survive in this hostile galaxy. Anything that deviates from their beliefs is seen as a threat, not just to their faith, but to the Imperium itself.
And that belief, that absolute certainty, it leads them to commit acts that many would see as horrific. The persecution of mutants, the burning of heretics, the constant wars against alien races, all done in the name of the emperor.
The Ecclesiarchy sees things in black and white, good versus evil, the faithful against the heretic. There's no middle ground, no room for disagreement. Their entire worldview is shaped by the grim reality of the 41st millennium, a time of endless war and constant danger.
And this worldview, it influences how they treat psychers, those individuals who can tap into the power of the warp. The Ecclesiarchy views them with a mix of fear and distrust. They see them as potential pathways for chaos, as gateways for demons to enter the material realm.
Psychers present a real challenge to how the Ecclesiarchy sees the universe. They prove that there are forces beyond the Emperor's control powers that can corrupt even the most faithful. The Ecclesiarchy's solution to this has been to create a system of strict control, sanctioning those psychers they deem loyal and getting rid of those who are a threat.
It's a system that's inherently risky, both for the psychers themselves and the Imperium as a whole. The witch hunts, the purges, the constant fear and suspicion. It creates an atmosphere of paranoia and distrust, where even the slightest difference can be seen as heresy. And all of this stems from this deep fear of the warp, this belief that it's a realm of pure chaos and evil, a place inhabited by demons that devour souls.
The warp is incredibly powerful, but incredibly dangerous too. It's the realm of emotions, of dreams and nightmares. And for those who aren't trained or protected, it can be a one-way trip to damnation. The Ecclesiarchy, they understand this, and they use that fear to their advantage.
It's a powerful tool for control, but it's also a risky game to play. Fear can bring people together and motivate them, but it can also tear them apart and lead to destruction. And in the wrong hands, it can be used to justify terrible acts of cruelty.
The history of the Ecclesiarchy is full of examples of this. From the reign of the mad High Lord Guj Van Dyer to the countless witch hunts and purges that have ravaged the Imperium, fear has been used as a weapon to eliminate rivals, gain power, and force people to conform.
It's a darker side of the Ecclesiarchy, a side that's often hidden behind their public displays of devotion and piety. But we can't forget that beneath that surface of faith, there's a core of steel, a willingness to do whatever it takes to make sure the Emperor's will is done.
That willingness to use force, that unwavering belief that they're fighting a righteous war against the forces of darkness, that's what makes the Ecclesiarchy such a powerful force in the Warhammer 40K universe. They're not just priests and preachers, they're warriors, crusaders, zealots, willing to give their lives for the Emperor and for humanity's survival.
And they have a massive arsenal at their disposal. From the iconic Adeptus Sororitas, the Sisters of Battle, to the countless armies of fanatical followers that rally to their cause, the Ecclesiarchy can muster a force capable of crushing any opposition.
The Sisters of Battle, they're a great example of the contradictions within the Ecclesiarchy. They're warriors trained to kill and die for the Emperor, but they're also nuns sworn to chastity, poverty, and obedience. It's a strange combination that really reflects the complex and often conflicting beliefs of the Ecclesiarchy.
On one hand, they represent the Ecclesiarchy's willingness to use force to defend their faith. But on the other hand, they also represent the purity and devotion at the heart of the Imperial Creed. They are both the sword and the shield of the Ecclesiarchy, a force to be reckoned with in the battles of the 41st millennium.
And they're not alone. The Ecclesiarchy can also call upon the Frateris Militia, these huge armies of ordinary people who rise up to protect their worlds from heresy and invasion. They're not professional soldiers, but their faith and their belief in the righteousness of their cause make them a force to be reckoned with.
It's a reminder that the Ecclesiarchy's power doesn't just come from its armies and weapons. It comes from its ability to inspire and mobilize people. They're masters of propaganda, using fear, hope, and religious fervor to motivate their followers. They understand the power of belief, and they know how to use it better than almost anyone.
And this power is even greater because they control the Schola Progenium, this vast network of orphanages where they raise and train the children of those who died serving the Emperor. These children are taught the Imperial Creed from a very young age, instilling in them a sense of duty, self-sacrifice, and absolute loyalty to the Emperor. They are the future of the Imperium, shaped by the Ecclesiarchy's ideals.
It's a system that creates some of the Imperium's most dedicated and skilled individuals. Many of their best officers, administrators, even inquisitors started their lives in the Schola Progenium, where they were given a sense of purpose that goes beyond personal ambition.
The Schola Progenium shows how the Ecclesiarchy is thinking about the long game. They're not just focused on the present, they're shaping the future of the Imperium, making sure that the Emperor's will is carried out for generations to come.
It's a bit of a chilling thought to be raised in a system where individuality is suppressed, dissent is crushed, and loyalty to the Emperor is the only thing that matters.
That's just the reality of life in the Imperium. A harsh and unforgiving existence where survival is a constant struggle and faith is often the only comfort. The Ecclesiarchy offers its followers a way to be saved, a sense of purpose in a chaotic and dangerous universe. But it comes at a price. The price of freedom, the price of individuality, the price of questioning anything.
It's a steep price to pay, and yet so many are willing to pay it, driven by fear, by desperation, or by a true belief in the Emperor's divinity. But even within this seemingly unbreakable structure, this rigid system of faith, there are cracks. There are those who question, who doubt, who search for something different.
The Ecclesiarchy isn't completely monolithic. Despite its strict doctrines and ruthless methods, there's actually a surprising amount of diversity within it. There are different sects, different interpretations of the Imperial Creed, different ways of practicing faith.
Can you give us some examples of these different sects? I'm always curious about how beliefs can change and evolve even within a system that seems so unified.
Take the Drusians, for example. They follow Saint Drusus, a legendary figure from the Imperium's past, who was known for his stoicism and his unwavering dedication to duty. The Drusians believe that suffering is a path to enlightenment, a way to purify your soul and become closer to the Emperor. They're known for their ascetic practices, their willingness to endure pain and hardship, and their unwavering loyalty to their leaders.
It sounds like a pretty harsh and demanding belief system. It makes me wonder what happens to those who can't handle the suffering. Those who break under the pressure, are they cast out, considered unworthy of the Emperor's grace?
The Ecclesiarchy offers a way to redemption for everyone, but that path isn't always easy. For those who stumble, who stray from the righteous path, there's the Confessor.
The Confessor, a figure both feared and revered in the Imperium. Tell us more about their role in the Ecclesiarchy.
The Confessor is a spiritual guide, a counselor, but also a judge and punisher. They take care of the faithful, offering guidance and absolution, but they also root out heresy, expose the wicked, and punish those who have turned away from the Emperor's light.
So they're both the protector and the enforcer, shielding the flock while also getting rid of the weak and unworthy. It's a complex role requiring a unique combination of compassion and ruthlessness.
You often find confessors on the front lines accompanying Imperial Guard regiments into battle. They provide spiritual support to the troops, keeping their morale up and strengthening their faith in the face of the enemy. But they also act as disciplinarians, punishing those who falter or betray their oaths.
And they're known for using some pretty extreme methods. I've heard stories of confessors using flails with barbed wire on them, whipping the backs of those who are seen as lacking faith or courage.
The Imperium is a place of extremes where pain and suffering are often seen as the only way to redemption. The confessor embodies this belief, using pain to cleanse the soul and force the wicked back toward the Emperor's light.
But what about those who are beyond saving those who have committed such terrible sins that even the confessor's flail can't cleanse them? What happens to those who are truly lost?
For those who are beyond saving, there is the penitent engine, a horrifying combination of flesh and machine, a prison that's also a weapon. It's a testament to the Imperium's brutality, their belief that even the most depraved soul can be redeemed, even if that redemption comes through suffering and self-destruction.
It's a chilling reminder that the Ecclesiarchy's idea of justice is often brutal and unforgiving. But it also shows their belief in the possibility of redemption, no matter how twisted and painful that redemption might be.
The penitent engine is a powerful symbol of the Ecclesiarchy's worldview. It represents their unwavering faith in the Emperor, their willingness to do whatever it takes to fight for his cause, and their belief that even the most wicked soul can find salvation, even if that path leads through fire and blood.
It's a grim and unsettling thought. And it brings us to a question that's been on my mind throughout our discussion. If the Ecclesiarchy is so powerful, so influential, so deeply ingrained in the Imperium, how do they interact with the other major powers? Specifically, I'm thinking about the Inquisition, that secretive organization tasked with rooting out heresy and protecting the Imperium from threats within. Do they work together, or are they rivals competing for power and control?
The relationship between the Ecclesiarchy and the Inquisition is complicated. It's a mix of cooperation, rivalry, and distrust. On the surface, they have a common goal, protecting the Imperium from chaos and keeping the faith pure. But beneath that shared goal, there's a deep tension, a struggle for power and control that has shaped the Imperium's history.
It sounds like a delicate balancing act, trying to cooperate with an organization as secretive and ruthless as the Inquisition, while also holding on to their own authority and independence.
The Ecclesiarchy is cautious of the Inquisition's power. Inquisitors answer only to the Emperor, and their methods can be brutal and unpredictable. They often operate outside the law, and their investigations can uncover secrets that the Ecclesiarchy would rather keep hidden.
It's a clash of ideologies, really. The Ecclesiarchy represents the established order, the rigid doctrines and hierarchical structures that have defined the Imperium for centuries. The Inquisition, on the other hand, represents a more radical and unconventional approach to faith, a willingness to bend or even break the rules to achieve their goals.
The Inquisition sees themselves as the Emperor's most loyal servants, the ultimate defenders of his will, and they're not afraid to challenge the Ecclesiarchy's authority if they think it's necessary to protect the Imperium.
But despite this underlying tension, there are times when the Ecclesiarchy and the Inquisition have to work together. After all, they share common enemies, chaos, heresy, and all the other threats that constantly attack the Imperium. How do they manage to cooperate when their interests align?
Well, necessity often forces them to work together. When there's a major threat, like a chaos invasion or a widespread outbreak of heresy, the Ecclesiarchy and the Inquisition will put aside their differences and focus on eliminating the threat. The Ecclesiarchy can give the Inquisition resources, manpower, and access to their vast network of informants. The Inquisition, in return, can offer the Ecclesiarchy their expertise in finding and eliminating heresy, access to advanced technology, and a willingness to do whatever it takes to get the job done.
So it's a partnership born out of necessity rather than genuine trust.
Yeah.
But even when they're working together, there's always this sense of suspicion and underlying feeling that each side is waiting for the other to slip up to overstep their boundaries.
The Ecclesiarchy and the Inquisition are like two wolves circling each other, wary of each other's power, but knowing that they're stronger together than they are apart. It's a dangerous game. They're playing one that could easily turn into open conflict if either side feels threatened or betrayed.
And it's a game that's been played out countless times throughout the Imperium's history, with both sides constantly vying for power, influence, and the Emperor's favor.
The Ecclesiarchy sees the Inquisition as a necessary evil, a tool to be used carefully and cautiously. The Inquisition sees the Ecclesiarchy as this huge, slow-moving entity resistant to change and often more concerned with holding on to power than with the true needs of the Imperium.
It's a relationship built on tension and mistrust, but it's also crucial for the Imperium's survival. They need each other, even if they don't always like it. It's a testament to the complexities of power faith and what it means to be human in a universe that's constantly on the verge of destruction.
It really makes you think, doesn't it? Two incredibly powerful organizations, both claiming to be acting in the Emperor's name, but they're always trying to outmaneuver each other, always worried that the other one might try to take their power.
It's like something out of a play, all that ambition, faith, and paranoia. But let's shift gears a bit. We've been talking about how the Ecclesiarchy interacts with other parts of the Imperium, but what about their impact on the individual? How does the Ecclesiarchy affect the lives of ordinary people living in the Imperium?
The Ecclesiarchy's influence is everywhere in the Imperium. It touches every part of life, from the moment you're born to the moment you die, maybe even beyond. They control things like education, healthcare, and social welfare. They provide spiritual guidance, moral teachings, and a sense of community in a galaxy that can feel very cold and unforgiving.
So they're not just a religious institution, they're like a safety net, a provider of basic services, a source of comfort and support in a world where suffering is just a part of life. It gives them a lot of power over people's lives.
Absolutely. For billions of people who are struggling and suffering in the Emperor's name, the Ecclesiarchy is often the only thing they have to hold on to. They offer the hope of salvation, the vision of an afterlife where good people are rewarded and bad people are punished.
It's a powerful message, one that really speaks to people who live in a world of constant war, poverty, and oppression. But it's also a message that can be twisted and used to control people and to justify the Imperium's often brutal actions.
The Ecclesiarchy is constantly walking a tightrope. They offer comfort and hope, but they also demand obedience and conformity. They preach forgiveness, but they're also ready to unleash the Emperor's fury on anyone who steps out of line.
It's a delicate balance, but one that the Ecclesiarchy has become very good at over thousands of years. They understand that humans need to believe in something bigger than themselves, something to give their lives meaning and purpose. And they use that understanding to hold on to the hearts and minds of the people in the Imperium.
But even the Ecclesiarchy can't control everything. The Imperium is vast and chaotic, and even the most devout can be tempted by heresy, by doubt, by the whispers of chaos that come from the warp. And when faith weakens, when the Emperor's light flickers, even the most devoted followers can be lost to the darkness.
It's a constant battle, a fight for the souls of humanity, a battle that the Ecclesiarchy is determined to win no matter the cost.
They'll use any weapon they have. Propaganda, indoctrination, fear, even violence. They won't stop until the Emperor's light shines on every corner of the galaxy.
Well, it seems we've reached the end of our exploration of the Ecclesiarchy, an organization that represents both the best and the worst of the Imperium. They offer hope, but demand obedience. They preach compassion, but wield the Emperor's wrath. They bring people together, but can also tear them apart.
Their story shows how powerful faith can be, but it's also a cautionary tale about the dangers of fanaticism and how power can corrupt. Even with the best intentions and the grim darkness of the 41st millennium, things can go very wrong.
And as the Imperium faces threats from all sides, both inside and out, only time will tell if the Ecclesiarchy's unwavering faith will save it or ultimately be its downfall.